Our house is on fire, and it seems like they're doing nothing to put the fire out. They're just watching it with the rest of us. Again, that's a Democrat saying that. Joining me now is former President George W. Bush senior advisor to Fox business contributor Karl Rove. Karl, great to see you. Thank you for being here.
You bet.
I'm just wondering, what do you think Democrats are going to do with President Biden before the next Democratic convention?
Well, I don't think he's going to be a candidate in 2024. He's already the oldest person ever elected president. In fact, he's the oldest person ever to be president. He was older by a couple of years the day he was sworn in than the previous oldest president, Ronald Reagan, when he left office. So right. I've said for more than a year that I think it's unlikely he's going to be the candidate. But even before we get to 2024, we're going through a process. There's going to be a column tomorrow in the Wall Street Journal. I've read it. It's very insightful, well written.
I think I know who wrote it.
I thought very thoughtful. Yeah, I think I did a hell of a job on it myself. But I think what we're seeing now playing out is the natural end of the strategy that the Biden administration has been pursuing politically for over a year. You know, Kubler-Ross has the 5 stages of grief. Well, I think there are 6 stages of the White House, of the Biden White House strategy. The first is denial. When they have bad news, they describe it in such a way that it doesn't match reality. Kabul, we all saw that disaster. And then we saw the president go on television and say it was an extraordinary success.
Right. It was
in January or February, he talked about the January jobs number and says history has been made. Yeah. We had nearly 3 million fewer people working at the end of January than we had working before the pandemic began. And he said it's been a historic success. And so the start is denial. But after a while, even they figure out they can't keep doing it, so they start blaming somebody. Inflation has been high. So what do? Starting in about April, they say, well, it's Putin's price hike. It's Putin's responsibility for gasoline prices. A month later, they're saying it's his responsibility for food prices as well. But that doesn't work. So they changed the subject. In May, it's now suddenly the abortion is all about it. The Supreme Court has acted. We've got to make the election all about abortion. And you keep going. Blame Trump was the next thing. And then they said, we're going to do something. And we're going to try anything. Throw it up the wall. You know, student debt relief. Maybe I'm going to sign a bill that investigates global shipping prices. It just on and on. But where it ends up is abandoned ship, and we're in the abandoned ship part of the process
what's happening,
now.
Right? That's what's happening. All the Democrats are trying to do that, but how do they specifically do it? How do they convince Biden not to run? What would be the process by which they do that?
Well, first of all, right now they're not thinking that long. They're thinking November. They're abandoning ship now because they're trying to save themselves. They're trying to say he's failing. And some candidates are going to distance themselves from him, and other people are saying he's failing in an attempt to get him to move dramatically to the left and use his executive powers to do things that he cannot legally do. They've got a big laundry list of those things. Executive orders to, for example, establish abortion clinics on federal land. Right. I mean, talk about weird things. But what we're seeing play out is the result of the White House not having a clear pattern of a picture of what they needed to do, and having built up expectations in the campaign they were going to be a normal Democrat, and then came in and did Build Back Better and the American Rescue Plan, and I'm the most transformational
we know it's not working,
but
again, I just want an idea of how they're going to try to change things and what they replace Biden with, because let's face it, it's the policies. It's not Biden that's screwing everything up. It's the policies that he's been sort of formatted to put in place. That's what's screwing up our economy. That's what's causing inflation. That's what's causing all the problems from energy to the border to Afghanistan, et cetera. It's the policies. And I don't see anybody that they have in the wings waiting that would change those policies.
No, they're going to sort of assume that changing the personality gives them a chance to distance themselves from Biden. But you're right. That's exactly why it's not going to work this year in the midterm elections, because they can distance themselves all they like, but people are going to go in and say, I get to send a message to Joe Biden that I don't like what he's doing and I don't appreciate his quality of leadership. I'm voting Republican. And the same thing is going to happen in 2024. Then they're going to begin looking at Biden versus the potential Republican opponents. But I think a lot of Democrats by then are going to say, look, good man, but he's not up to it, and we got to find somebody new. And whether that's organic, building up from the bottom, and there are a lot of ambitious people who want to become president on the Democratic side who might jump on top of that, or whether it happens from the top down, the senior leaders of the Democratic Party go to him and say, President, you know, we appreciate it, you're a good man, but you can't run again.
But who's
I don't know
Carl,
how
once
it works,
again, getting back to the basics, you and I know it's the policies that makes the difference. I mean, you know, a lot of people that didn't like Trump, but they loved his policies, and because his policies worked, and that's why they voted for Trump. I mean, I can't think of anybody waiting in the wings from the Democrat side who's going to change a single policy pushed by Biden. Can you?
Well, no, in reality, no, but they're going to sure as heck sound like it. They're going to say, look what I did as the governor of Illinois, or look at what I've been trying to do in the United States Senate that was being blocked by the incompetence of the Biden administration. And it won't be that cutting about it, but that's going to be the fundamental message. But yeah, the Democratic Party is moving to the left. And the question is there going to be anybody pop up and say, I'm a normal Democrat and I'm moving it back to the center?
Well, there is. There's one person
that
there's one person that does it, and Larry Kudlow say he should run for president on the Democratic side, and that's Joe Manchin. I mean, will there be a time at which, after a devastating loss in the midterms, that they will snap and say, we need somebody like that? Maybe not him particularly, but somebody in the middle, truly in the middle?
Yeah, well, the bigger the defeat, the more likely it is that they'll wake up. Yeah, the more likely it is that they'll say, you know, rather than having an AOC type candidate in 2024, a Bernie Sanders type candidate, Elizabeth Warren style candidate, we want somebody who's more like, you know, the former lieutenant governor of and mayor of New Orleans, Mitch Landry, who's now in the Biden administration. You know, it could be. I doubt it's going to be Joe Manchin. I just think the animosity towards him among national Democrats is too big. But yeah, is there a likelihood for a more centrist Democrat? Yeah, but it requires a very big defeat this fall for them to snap out of it.
Well, Americans aren't going to fall for it. Americans are not going to fall for this policy any longer. I mean, it's clear in all the polling. Carl, good to see you. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. Enjoy your summer.